Hello, I hope you all are doing so well today. I just wanted to discuss a couple of things. So, there have been a lot of things that I've been thinking about over this last week or so. First, I just want to mention, there's a lot of, I think everyone is feeling it, and I'm sure it's for a variety of different reasons. But I'll just say what I've been feeling and seeing, because, again, really, that's the only place I can come from. Um, but there has been this sense of kind of really heavy density within the fields. That is, the image I got was as if you were landing into the earth for the first time. And if you kind of come down with this huge, impact into the land, the dust that gets stirred up because of that, that really feels like what's going on right now. I think that we are anchoring in so strongly with the light that it's obviously we know the patterns, these things, but I think it's more than that because what I keep seeing is in my work, it's recently shifted this last week very strongly to the union energies, and what's coming up around that, and specifically what is being held within the masculine tone. So for me, yes, we can talk about the embodiment of the males, but it's really the divine masculine, not just in that sense, but for ourselves as well. Because again, this is also the form and the structure of the system. It's very divine masculine tones. So really, this overarching theme of how are we now moving forward and presenting differently through our awareness as the light. And so what I've been sensing is this, it's like the light needs to come in and it needs to anchor in now, and it needs to anchor into the earth, and it's anchoring through the divine feminine as this organic divine mother tone. But as a result of that, again, we always say, right, like how willing are we to do this? Because as a result of that, all of this stuff that has to kind of come up. So there's a lot of patterns that are being revisited specifically to union, to the relationship dynamics, which is almost a whole other area in and of itself now. So those of us who are dealing with both, it's really this, it feels like there's a lot of pressure. It's a bit overwhelming at times. But I really had to kind of take a step back over the last few days because I just was like feeling, again, very sluggish, very, okay, where am I going? What am I doing with all of this? And again, it's about directing my own field, connecting into my own light and working from there, and not being distracted by all this insanity within the energies as well, because I can see where it's very easy to get caught up in what is happening right now, just energetically, not even what's going on in the 3D world, right? So we have, that as well. So it's lots of layers and levels of this distortion that is coming to the surface now. So there were so one of the things I started to kind of explore as well is this dark feminine and the implications that this has on the spiritual community and the spiritual systems. It was brought to my attention. Someone said to me, you really need to reclaim your power from the matriarchy. And, it's so, we always talk about the patriarchy, we talk about the matrix, and I always see that as kind of a very masculine type energy. And yet, the other side of this, right? Because there is always this balance between masculine and feminine. So what is the feminine kind of counterpart energy to that? It is the dark divine feminine. So we may experience all of this distortion and darkness just through the matrix, right? We know the systems, the structures, the institutions, these kinds of things. Where does the dark feminine come into play? To me, when I think about masculine and feminine, it's like the masculine kind of holds the structure for this etheric divine feminine quality, right? That's the creation energy. It's the ethers, the tones of light, and these kinds of things, on a very kind of rudimentary scale, let's say. But I started thinking back about my own spiritual experience when I first started to wake up and I first started to interact with people in that capacity. And I started to realize, I've been experiencing this all along. It's this energy that says, now, my premise is that, we are the light, we are awakened, we know how to do this. We just haven't fully quite remembered yet. And so, as light beings, we are going to all these people who appear to know and understand more than we do. And we're asking them for advice, and yet they are not healed in themselves yet either. So, they have these dark qualities and these dark tones that are presenting through them. And we can talk about, when you're a highlight being, it's like, I'm not a fan of talking about being targeted, right? And these kinds of things. And yet, there comes a point where we have to just start to face the facts. Again, I've had some really wonderful people come across my path in the last few months who have really, I think I've gone through this part of my mission where it's like I had to be underground, I had to be in these corridors, like finding my way through the darkness. I've kind of popped up out of the dirt now. And so it's strange how I'm really starting to connect with people. I've never felt that I've had a soul tribe and these kinds of things, but I'm starting to get assistance from different people in different arenas. And it was pointed out to me, they said, you really need to accept the fact that you were full on abused through these spiritual beings, right? My experiences with these teachers and people that I've worked with and just the communities in general. And that the sooner, it's like the sooner you do that, the better it's going to be for everyone. And I had a moment of like a flashback, remembering back even to my marriage, where it finally hit me, like the fact that I was in an abusive relationship. And it's the weirdest feeling. I can't describe it really. I can't do it justice. But if you've been in that situation, you know what I'm saying? It's like this, it's a mix of relief, because finally all this insanity suddenly makes sense. There's a reason for it, right? But also this feeling of shame, like, how did I get myself into this situation? So it's similar with the spiritual community as well, because what I started to notice was through the women that I've worked with. Now, I've worked with some men, but it's mostly been on a one-to-one capacity, and it's been a totally different experience than it has been because with the women, because what tends to happen is it's like, yeah, we seem like we're all supporting each other and getting along, but there will always be those little, it's like those little digs that come through, right? So it's like, oh yeah, you're so talented and you have so many gifts, but you know what? Your root chakra, you keep closing it down, or, you have this stuff that you need to get rid of and you need to let go and you need to clear out this, and that, right? So it's never this fully support. And I understand we can look at this from many directions, right? It's like, it's also part of human nature. I get that. But when we're trying to get on our path, trying to find our way, and we're totally feeling like we are always being thwarted, turned in a different direction. Or for me, it's always been about my doubt. People would be like, oh, you doubt yourself too much. But it's like, what they would say is like, oh, you doubt yourself? See, you doubt yourself. See, you're not there yet. You're not there yet. And it's like they use that against you. And this is all part of, as I've been seeing through the fields and through the people I've been working through with, as I've been seeing, through the trickery of the dynamics, and I'm seeing this within other people's fields as well, how these energies come in and they distort, and it's a game, and their whole design, their whole goal is to get us from trusting ourselves, to get us out of this place where we feel like we are on our path and connected to our light. And so I was saying to a friend the other day, I said, you know what I'm going to start doing is just trusting all my doubts, because apparently that's what's been going on this whole time. They are so good at seeing and finding. They know our weaknesses, right? It's mapped out. They have access to all this stuff. It's no secret, right? So it's like all these places where it only takes a person, they just change the tone of their voice, or they say one thing where it's like, oh, you know what? And I lose it. And I talked about this in my last video too, I think, about how, someone was kind of talking about something in my chart, and it's like, but it took this totally different spin on it and made it seem like it could be a really negative thing. And yet I knew in my mind that, no, I already saw this and I'm working on taking a different path with this energy. But yet, because she said it, I totally started to doubt myself. And I could even hear the change in her voice. I could hear the shift. It's like the transmission starts to come through, right? Where these tones start to pick up on where we're at and just start to totally target our weaknesses. So I was thinking about this as well. People will talk about being a victim. Like, you don't want to be a victim and blame something else for your problems. And I thought, what's funny is that I've always blamed myself. I have always felt like a victim. And all I've ever said is like, why am I so lazy? Why am I so dumb? How come I can't figure this out? How come I can't find my way? Why do I feel like there's always something missing? So I'm not blaming the outer world. I was blaming myself. And I did feel like a victim. I had victim consciousness, right? The funny thing is, when I started realizing, okay, this is not me. This is stuff that is specifically designed. And it's not just that we are targeted as light beings, right? It's specifically designed to keep everyone out of their truth, everyone out of their light, right? But we feel the more that we push towards our light, the more we feel it. So we start to say, okay, well, I'm kind of targeted, right? It's like, I'm really working through this. And so we just receive more of it. It's like, if you're going to lay in bed and not do anything, they're not going to, what? You're doing exactly what they want, right? So it's like the mind games that this energy plays too, the way that you have to start to kind of figure out and see the game of it. And once you do, it kind of flips everything on its head, because once I realized, like I was saying, this is what's happening. It's not me doing this to myself. This is part of the matrix. It's part of being in this system. It's part of these dark, divine, feminine energies that it's constantly turning us in these other directions. And when I started to see it that way, I feel totally empowered, which is contrary to what you would think. It's like, if I was going to blame these energies, it seems like I'm a victim of these energies, and therefore it would disempower me through the victim stance, but it doesn't. Like, and that doesn't make any sense to me, which just kind of proves to me that this is all reversal energy. Because if I was blaming something else for my problems, that should be disempowering, but it's not. It's totally empowering. And it makes no logical sense in the way that we see the patterns here. So again, I've kind of taken this different outlook on what has been going on. And my camera just froze there for a second. That was weird. And starting to kind of reframe the way that I am having my own kind of, I don't even want to say spiritual experience anymore, because I feel like that word is so dirty. So part of what I was saying earlier too is that, you know, as these highlight beings, we go to these people who we see as teachers, as mentors, and these kinds of things. And yet we just have to accept the fact that, like, we are the ones who are here to bring in the light and shift these paradigms, not the majority of the people out there. Yes, I know everyone is on their own path. There's different versions of awakening and all this other kind of stuff. But for those of us who have really been feeling, what it has felt to me is just, it is like, it's mental slavery, it's psychological slavery, it's mental abuse, essentially. And I even see it with my own daughter. And this is where it's starting to become even more apparent to me, just how the systems work to inflict this kind of psychological pain and trauma on not just us, but these kids too, who are coming into their own, who are really saying no to this kind of conventional dynamic within these matrix systems. So that's also something else I'm feeling like I really need to start keeping an eye on, especially for my daughter, because she is so highly sensitive. And it's quite fascinating to see now how I'm like, oh, okay, see all these things that I keep blaming myself for, like, I missed that, I should have asked, I should have been more on top of her stuff. But it's like, there are things in the background that continue to almost like shift and move without me even seeing it. And suddenly it pops up and I'm like, where did this come from now? You know, it's like, she is trying her best, she is working hard, and yet there are still things that come in to kind of throw her off. And maybe I'll talk about more about this at some point later in another video, because it's a problem. It's a problem for these kids. And really, this kind of brings me to my next topic of education. And yes, the systems, we know the systems are detrimental to the health and well-being of the children, because it's kind of an outside, it's imposed onto them, right? What was interesting was I will sometimes get these words and I don't really know what they mean. I know how to use them in a sentence, right? It sounds like it fits and it's appropriate, but sometimes I have to go in and look up like the true meaning of these words, because they will come through and I'm like, well, it's obviously important because it's coming as just a singular word. So what I started to do was to look at the origin of the word. So looking at the etymology of these specific words that I was getting. And so I've kind of started to do that with everything that comes to me now. And I was looking at the word education, and of course, what comes up around that is, this is the place that we send our kids to. It's a government institution. But if you look at the origin of the word, what it really means is to draw forth from, to allow to express from the inside out, rather than the way that education is typically viewed today, which is this imposition. This is what you're here to learn. This is how you're going to learn. We're going to teach you everything you need to know. So yes, in the 3D world, we see this, but it's also true for the spiritual community. And this is where I really started to see, oh my goodness, what I have been through is my own kind of education through the spiritual community, which is an institution. It's an institution of the matrix. It's the false ascension matrix, whatever you want to call it. But again, to me, it's all held within, and it should be about drawing that out of the being, right? Drawing that forth. How does it feel for you? What are you seeing? What are you experiencing? Instead of, okay, this is what you do. You sit down and you connect to this and you connect to that, because that has been my experience from the very beginning. I always say, like, I had a very wonderful teacher, one of my very first teachers, and I loved her dearly. But I also recognize now that she was teaching a system that she probably learned from her teacher, that learned from whoever, right? And we start to believe that, okay, this is the chakra system. This is how it works. This is how it runs. And it's like passed on, and everyone starts to repeat all these things, which I never saw chakras. I never understood them in that way. Yes, I do understand energy. I would feel energy in the body, but I would never see it in that fashion. And even when I was starting to channel, right, I always tell the story of how the very first time I sat down for like an automatic writing class, and it was like, okay, connect to the energy or whatever. And suddenly the teacher is telling me, well, we're not integrating. Like I was doing something and I wasn't even aware of what I was doing. And she was kind of looking at me, and I was like, I don't even understand what you're saying. I don't even know what integration means, But she had a specific way that she wanted it done. And from that point on, I always doubted myself and questioned myself, because for me, I've always felt like it wasn't necessary for me to connect to outside beings. And yet this is the way we were taught, right? And so I always felt wrong, and I always felt like, well, I better not say like I feel like I have the answers inside of me, or that the wisdom is coming from somewhere within me, because that's wrong, right? We were told we're only supposed to be a vessel. We need to connect to higher beings. We're just the human. We are not ascended. We're not a higher self or whatever, and there's different varieties of this, yes, because we say we have a higher self, connect to your higher self. It's incredibly confusing. And I only can see it now in retrospect, of course, after having gone through all of this, that, oh my God, I knew all along what I was doing. Yes, I probably needed to be taught how to use my own tools and energies. And I don't know what kind of teacher actually does that, or can see like each person has their own specific way of doing things, right? Because it just doesn't really exist out there yet. But yeah, this is what I'm starting to learn and realize, or not even learn. It's like, this is what I always believed to be true. And yes, there are certain things like, how do you connect into we go into the heart space and we breathe, and there are all these kind of techniques, right? But it's like, beyond that, you are your own design of how this works for you. And so this is part of my issue, has always been trying to look for outside confirmation, right? And I know this is where the self-worth and the doubt comes in, but yet the more that I would look, the more I would doubt myself even more, right? The more that I would try to find answers, the more frustrating it would be for me. So it's like, we're never going to find the answers outside. We totally have to go internally to do this. And yet we keep asking and looking for permission. Like, am I right? Is this right? Am I doing it right? Please, someone tell me. Oh my gosh, I'm not seeing anything out there like I'm seeing, and this information that I'm getting, I'm trying to corroborate like with someone else, is that, so it's keeping me from really expressing my own light and my own truth, because it's not being validated. But again, why would it be validated? Like that would go against the whole purpose of the system, right? So, gosh, I hope some of this made sense. I feel like I've just been kind of rambling on and talking in circles. But I do, yes, I think my point that I'm trying to bring together here is this education through this spiritual community has been very much based on the, let's say, dark matriarchy, or the matriarchy itself. I don't even know what the distinction would be, but these dark feminine energies who are trying to teach us how to be these enlightened beings, but yet, really putting the dampers in, the plugs, the blockages, right? They are just feeding the blockages within us. And so, it would always kind of feel ridiculous to me that I was doing so much work, working on myself so much energetically, and yet not really feeling like I'm getting anywhere. And it wasn't really until I broke from everything that I had been connected to and kind of had to take a few months to myself and say, what the heck is happening? And looking for answers, and even then trying to ask people, like, can someone explain to me what the heck did I just go through? And really at its crux, it's about, we hold this light internal, and no one else is going to be able to teach us how to work with our own light. That is an experience. Again, I've always said, number one, it's an unbecoming. So we're unlearning these patterns that we have taken on. And number two, it's an experiential journey. So unless you actually physically experience and go through these things, you don't embody that into your human. And I know this seems like a bit of a paradox, because yes, we are the light, yes, it's here, yes, it's present, and yet our purpose in being in these bodies is to bring through the wisdom and the knowing of the light into the body system itself. So this is why, people will talk about ascension symptoms. I don't necessarily see it that way. I see it as the light lighting up more and more and more to release out the programming and the inserts that are in there. It's not about necessarily, we have to expand the body in order to bring in more light. That is a part of it, but these symptoms and things that people talk about sometimes, I've really started to feel that, this is just another part of these programmings that are in the fields to kind of slow us down, and to make us, it's really about sending us into these corners sometimes, right? It's like going down these pathways that perhaps we wouldn't have gone down if we were fully in our knowing. And it's like, what's over here? Oh God, I have this ache today. Let me go research something. Oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. We get caught up in the heaviness and the dreariness of all of it. And yet I just feel to keep coming back to this, that's what these energies want. And I'm not playing with that anymore. So it's like, welcome to the revolution. I see what the F has been going on, and it's not my fault. I didn't do this. Although, let's not get into that, right? It's like, what was the true story of the fall of who knows? But the point is that we are here within this time now to release out of these things, to wake up to the game of what these energies are really doing, which is to thwart us at every turn. And it's not just us as these light beings, right? It's like people talk about the monkey mind and the mental chatter and all these kinds of things. And even when we get into depression and mental health and anxiety, I was speaking about this in my other video. Like, I went through this period of time where it was just awful. I was like, what is wrong with me? This is just the matrix at work. So it's like, the more, and this is what I tried, with my daughter, it's like, I'm her mother, so she doesn't believe anything I say, right? But it's like, I'm like, just ignore it. And it's not ignore it like it doesn't actually exist. I know it actually exists, but it's like, the more energy and power you give to it, we know this, right? The more it has control over us. And so and that's the thing that I think is so tricky. It's like, yeah, we don't want to say, it's just an illusion and you are just making it up, or because, you're being attacked by it, that means it's within you. And so you need to heal that and get rid of it. It's like, that's not it. There's like these little, it's like, what's the truth? There's this book, right? And it's like, yes, it makes sense to say that. But then within the binding, there's all this BS bullshit that is put in there, because it's not to say like, just ignore it. It doesn't exist if you ignore it, because it does exist. And yet it is important to, in many ways, kind of ignore it. It's a way of not living with it. But that's the part of the game, right? They want you to put your attention on that. They want you to be distracted by it, is really the point of it. So if you can just, yeah, I know what that is, and I'm not going to be distracted by it, right? This is the truth. The truth is here. Of course, they don't want me to come into my light and come back to myself and see it for what it is, right? It's like, go down another rabbit hole. Why don't you? Have fun. We'll see you in another year. Maybe you'll pop up again, kind of thing. So, yes, I've had some issues with my daughter over the last couple of days, so I'm a bit riled up over all these things. And yet, again, it's so almost exciting, because it's like, I get it now. I see what is happening here. And it's, yes, we do have to be, I think I always thought there would be this point where it's like, I am light and I can relax now and this is going to be fine and my life is just going to move forward. I'm going to be able to manifest everything that I've ever wanted. No, it's about being vigilant, because what I've noticed, and again, it's about knowing where our weakness is, right? So for me, it's the self-doubt. I love to doubt myself. For some reason, I think it makes me, I don't know. I've always felt too like that part of me also keeps my ego in check. Like, as long as I doubt everything and I'm very analytical about what I'm seeing and experiencing, that keeps me from falling into some weird place as well, though, right? So it's not all black and white sometimes. And I totally lost my train of thought with this. So, I can, feel the insanity. Oh yeah, that's the point, right? Is like, I was talking with one of my daughter's teachers today, and I used to always be on, it's not the defensive, I wouldn't even know what to call it, but always I would err on the side of me being wrong, right? Like, maybe I misheard something, maybe my daughter didn't quite tell me the actual truth, maybe this, maybe that, whatever. This was always my stance, was like, I'm sorry, I'm sure I'm wrong, so let me get your story. And today, things have been shifting over the last couple of days, so I'm taking a different perspective. But today I was like, no, I want to know your exact reasoning. What was your rationalization for saying this to her? Because this is different than what her accommodations are supposed to be for school. And maybe this is and I didn't say all this, right? But it's like, maybe this is her personal opinion about something, but she has rights. She has things outlined in her papers that are supposed to be followed. And if the decision, because it's a personal decision and it's a personal belief for you, that you're not giving her the structure and the outline that she needs to be able to make it through her day without anxiety being provoked in a very almost, again, torturous way, this is a problem, And so I've stopped taking this stance of, I'm sure it's me. It's like, no, I see now. And even, talking to people, going to the grocery store, whatever, people can just make these comments sometimes that they feel like someone sticks the knife in and they just keep twisting it. These are those distorted dark energies. And again, like I said, I know it's part of human life sometimes, but yet, why should anyone, we talk about being a compassionate human being, why should anyone be saying any of these things? Why should we all not be uplifting each other? It's ridiculous to me. So, light being or not, whatever you identify yourself as, to me, it's just unacceptable. Yes, I get it's a part of life, but it's not natural. It's not the way things are supposed to be. And I'm kind of done accepting that I have to be accepting of these things. Because again, we are here to shift this out. We are here to move through this. Yes, we can anchor the light all we want, but unless these things start breaking down, which, we can say, oh, it's by default, this is what has to happen because the light has to come in. But yet, to me, it feels more like we need to start taking a stance against this. And it's not going out and screaming, the light, whatever, resurrection, however it's done. It's about noticing it within ourselves and taking a stand within ourselves that we are no longer going to fall prey to this game. I don't need to be mean. I don't need to be bitchy, none of it. But I'm clearly outlining and stating what I'm seeing and the discrepancies that I'm seeing. And this is what it is. It's factual at this point. So, and it's not just about the school. It's about my own experience with the light and the dark as well. I'm not putting up with the bullshit anymore. I see the game and it's like, this is the revolution. Welcome to the revolution. It's seeing it first inside yourself, where it's happening in your own field, where it's happening in your own personal relations. And once you start to see that and understand it fully, it's like game over. game over. So, okay. I apologize for rambling again. I hope that made a little bit of sense for someone out there. Thank you so much again for being here. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Take good care.